Empire. Gaming continues to grow in engagement models.
That's what we're trying to educate the market on and say, look, just because a particular game doesn't work doesn't say anything about this as a mechanism to attract people or as a mechanism to convert people.
That's Hussain Naqi, CEO of Inside the Pocket, who is helping teams and brands find ways to stay in touch with their customers. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. Hussain Naqi has a plethora of experience as an executive for teams, including the NFL's Jacksonville Jaguars. Now he's taking what he learned about all forms of fan engagement in growing his company. Our guest this week is Hussain Naqi. He's the founder and the CEO of Inside the Pocket, which is a global free-to-play content and skills gaming platform. And he's getting a lot of traction amongst one of the biggest sports in the world, cricket. Hi, Hussain. How are you?
I'm well, Bram. Thank you very much for your time. How are you?
Good. Tell me a little bit about Inside the Pocket. What do you guys do?
So we basically are a marketplace for free-to-play and pay-to-play games. There are a lot of great product developers out there, but because there's so many great product developers out there, it's really difficult for, businesses, whether it's a betting company, a media company, or a sports team or league, to choose among them. And so we've sought out our little niche by trying to democratize the space. And so integrating with our platform allows our B2B clients to take a variety of different games from the various producers and see what will really resonate with their audience. So if Pizza Hut has a variety of different types of people who eat pizzas, or BetMGM have a variety of different people who place bets, they can cater to each of those groups without having to put all their eggs in one basket. So that seems to be landing with the business community, at least.
That's a really interesting model. We've talked to a lot of people here who are trying to develop these types of games and then either grow an audience with the games or work with teams or work with fans in the way that you are. You're not actually developing them. You're finding games, you're placing a marketplace, and you're hoping to find buyers for these games.
Yeah, so we have our own games, but we don't profess to be sort of the best games on the planet, right? If somebody's looking for the slickest pick six game, they may or may not like ours. We're not offended if they don't. But we have deals with 20 plus of the top producers in the market. So, the likes of Chalkline or Low Six or BOA or whomever it is, they're all signed up to our platform. And if they don't like our products, no harm, no foul. They can take somebody else's. And the benefit of going with the platform approach is, not too unlike how you would think about your retirement savings, right? You would never, very few people would put all of their stock and all of their retirement in savings in Microsoft, right? You would buy a mutual fund and be able to sort of choose among the various things and allow yourself a little bit of risk mitigation. And so that's what we're bringing for folks who may not necessarily want to say, I'm going to go all in on this particular developer because while that developer is great, it may not suit a particular sliver of our audience. So let's choose something that sliver might want access to.
I want to go back into your background for a moment to see kind of where you've landed here with this business model. You did spend a period of time as a senior vice president in the NFL with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Could you tell me a little bit about that experience and what kind of led you down this path that you're on now?
Yeah, no, it was an incredible experience. I was up in New York with MetLife Stadium, building MetLife Stadium just before that, and after Shad bought the team, there were three of us who went down from New York to Jacksonville to join him in helping him, execute the vision he had for the Jags. So as you say, I was put in charge of fan engagement, and those were sadly for me prior to the Trevor years. So we had some pretty lean, pretty lean teams, and you need to figure out a way to sell tickets and get people engaged with the product, even if the product isn't necessarily what anybody on the team wanted it to be, ownership to football and business included. And I think one of the things that taught me, I grew up in College Station, Texas, home of Texas A&M, and I bleed football like most Americans do. And the one thing that you need is you need a hook, right? You need, even if your team isn't necessarily doing well, you need some reason to come and sit in that heat and sit in that humidity. And so what we really focused on as an organization was being able to provide people with different outlets at different price points. We tried a bunch of different things. We got made fun of a lot of times, whether that was on PTI or elsewhere, for trying different things. We got raked over the coals when we first got there for putting Red Zone on the big screen, saying, well, nobody wants to watch the Jags. That's why they come and watch Red Zone anyway. And lo and behold, most teams are playing Red Zone now. We got made fun of for having a fantasy lounge because people said it was a fantasy that anybody would even want to go watch the Jags. Lo and behold, there are a lot of fantasy places around the NFL and other sports. So you got to try different things, and you got to be able to offer different things to different people. And I having the good fortune of working for Rashad and Mark Lamping in Jacksonville, you get pitched a lot of things because you get seen as an organization that's willing to try different things. But again, being pitched those things and making a decision are two very different things. It's difficult to do. So I set out to make my former life a little easier, but then also add some value to people who used to sit in there, who now sit in that chair that I vacated. To really think about, to allow them, again, the ability to offer different things to different people and see what works. So if something doesn't work, then you bin it. You throw it in the trash. If it does work, then you elevate it and you really pump that. Just like any other walk of life or any other sort of marketing or engagement campaign. So, those are the kind of experiences that I've been lucky enough in my career to have that provided the intuition behind Inside the Pocket.
Okay, let's get back into that now. We have in the past talked to a lot of people who were introducing free-to-play gaming models for a lot of different reasons, and many of them were to link towards potential gambling as legislation was changing throughout the country, here at least in America. Others were doing it strictly just as an engagement model because they had a sponsor attachment, like you had mentioned Pizza Hut or someone like that. Where are we now with free-to-play gaming? What do fans want? What do teams want?
I think the challenge is that it's very early days, right? Whether you're in Brazil or you're in the U.S. or you're in, it doesn't really matter, right? It's still very early days. And I think the challenge people have with free to play is oftentimes are really focused on the real money side of things for obvious reasons, right? That is the bread and butter of the business, and that's what's really driving the revenue. I think one of the challenges in the free to play space is that people don't know what they want because they're not thinking about it as a strategy, right? They're thinking about it as a tactic. They're thinking about it as, okay, well, let's put out a free to play game, see if that works. If it doesn't, I think one of the mistakes that's being made is they're thinking about free to play very generally as not working if that particular product doesn't work, right? And I think that's what we're trying to educate the market on and say, look, just because a particular game doesn't work doesn't say anything about this as a mechanism to attract people or as a mechanism to convert people. I think what is still very much one of the things that's really important, particularly in a place like the U.S., right, where you have this kind of tapestry of regulation. Some markets that are regulated, some markets that people are salivating over, whether that's Texas, California, Florida, whatever it is, as a potential set of states that will regulate down the road. Whether you're trying to build a database in those kind of markets, or you already have a regulated market like a New York or New Jersey or wherever it is, that you're trying to figure out a way to lower your your acquisition cost. Those are the things that I think people need to start thinking about of how do we vary it up, right? Like anybody can offer a pick six game, but maybe there's a way that you can offer squares, right? We have a relationship with a group called Square Action that is bringing squares, or that sort of typical NFL Super Bowl game, to things like basketball, where it's a real time. Every time a basket is scored, somebody wins their square. That kind of thing, where you can offer different things, and those are mechanisms, or even micro betting, right? Macro betting has become legal in, call it 23 or so states. Those mechanisms are really important, and I think even drive more information than just a straight, pick the exact score of six games. Like that's been there, done that in a lot of ways. And I think consumers are maybe abandoning those kind of games because they're just, they're sort of same, right? Everybody can offer pick six exact scores. They want something new. And I think businesses are starting to demand of developers something new and something different. And, the more you can offer different things, the more interesting it becomes. And even from a consumer, from a business perspective, trying to learn what resonates with different audiences, I think is really important.
You also used the word convert when you were talking about this. And I like you, I grew up in the Washington area. I'm now very fortunate to be a voice of an NFL team, the team that I grew up loving. I bleed football too. I get the sense that football is culture in a lot of ways. And so when you say convert, you don't need to convert me. You don't need to convert my friends. You don't need, we're already there. So who are you talking about now that needs to be converted by teams to become either stronger fans or grow a bond to a team or a league?
The DC area is pretty transient, right? And, the Washington team has had, just like Jacksonville, this is not, I'm not casting any aspersions, right? It's been a tricky go lately, right? I mean, I don't think there's any, that's not a particularly controversial comment. And when you're in, let's say, a transient area, there are people you want to expose the team to, or there are ways, you are dyed-in-the-wool Washington Commanders fan, but maybe there's a way for you to engage with, the merchandise differently, or maybe there's a way to get you to spend a little bit more on your tickets. Maybe there's a way to get you to engage with their sponsors a little bit differently. Maybe there's a way that they can upsell you on food and beverage. There's as you know, just as well as I do, there's an entire value chain of revenue opportunities where you're with a team or with a league that is already, that caters to people who are already converted. But then, if you also think about, let's say, in the betting space, or in the gaming space or iGaming space, so let's say online casino space, there are a lot of people who don't actually know what a point spread is, or don't feel comfortable with the money line. I don't bet, right? I'm not a bettor. So, I've actually never placed a sports bet in my life, save for filling out an NCAA bracket. Those numbers and sportsbook can be really intimidating. And, I think the ability to sort of explain to people what these numbers mean, or put it in much plainer English, or much kind of presentation, there's a huge opportunity there. And you're right that there is a whole slew of people who are already converted, and that's not our target, right? The people who are playing free-to-play games, by and large, are not people who are regular bettors. It's people who either want to try it out, or want to win something, or need to be spoken to in a way that you're not trying to sell them something every single time, right? You want to engage with them. You want to start a conversation or continue a conversation. And I think consumers generally, this just as well as I do, you don't want to be browbeaten every single time you open up an email. You want to talk to the Commanders. You don't necessarily want to be sold by the Commanders every single time.
Yeah.
And I think gaming and gamification of the conversation can do that, where you don't necessarily have to feel like you're opening up your wallet every single time, but as and when you're ready to, you know what you're doing, and you feel comfortable, and it feels like a safe and trusted transaction. Those are things I think that's where we're trying to get the industry to.
Do you think teams and leagues need to speak and interact differently with the younger generation, which is a digital generation? Are you seeing that as well?
Oh, there's no doubt about it, right? I mean, whether it's attention spans, whether it is a language, whether it is, even topical things, right? Like there are things that people half my age that lands with them and is really, really, really important to them. That when I was their age, it wasn't, right? It was not even something that blipped on my radar. Just looking at you on Zoom, I think we're probably of a similar generation.
It didn't exist.
I may be older to you.
It didn't exist. That's what it is.
But, there's no doubt there are people who are half our age who are like, are these two old guys think they actually know what we're talking about?
Yeah.
We don't, right? And I think you need to have people who are younger than us speaking to them, because that's where authenticity comes in. And I don't think I can be authentic as a fan, right? When I walk into a stadium, I still get goosebumps, but I'm also old, right, at this point, and certainly much older than people who are the next generation of fans. And whether it is by medium, whether that's TikTok or Discord or Snap or whatever it is, whether it is by medium, and as by definition, how you talk to people on those mediums, I think you need to have people who can speak that language authentically, who are making those decisions on what the voice of the organization should be. Now, obviously, you need to put guardrails on, right? Like you can't sort of go totally crazy with how you want to speak with people. You still need to be on brand. But if you can thread that needle, that's pretty critical.
Your company's had a lot of success globally as well. So let me ask you very just kind of quickly here before I let you go. What are the differences you see in global fans versus fans in the United States?
Well, the most obvious one is obviously is the focus on sports, right? Like football, soccer is hugely popular, obviously outside of the U.S. Cricket in India, it's cricket and everything else. So sport by sport, of course, that's sort of the leading edge. And then from there, people are people. Things tend to land the way you might assume they would land. And people like to have fun. People like to be spoken to in a language in a way that they want to be spoken to. And, there's a certain universality to humans. And that's been pretty cool. I'm now based in London. Moved here about 8 years ago from Jacksonville. And it's pretty cool to know that people are people, irrespective of where you are.
Hussain Naqi is the founder and the CEO of Inside the Pocket. Thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate your time, and thank you for the opportunity.
On the next Future Sport podcast, professional cricket is trying to get a foothold in the U.S.
The U.S. in the last, I'd say, 20 or 30 years, there's been a large number of people from the Indian subcontinent, from Australia, from England, and so on, from cricket-playing countries who come and settle in the U.S., right? And those people have been following the sport. That's
Anand Rajaraman, co-owner of the San Francisco Unicorns, one of the member teams of Major League Cricket. That will do it for this episode. As always, the future is now. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein.